Good afternoon, and welcome to God Speaks. I'm your host and teacher, Marquita Brooks. We're going to continue to look at the message for the year 2020, the year of vision, and we're looking at planning like an eagle in 2020. And so we looked at vision, we looked at focus. Now we're looking at planning, and then of course next week we'll look at movement. Because those are the four things that the Lord would have us to look at when it comes to eagle-like vision in 2020. And so there's two scriptures that I gave you initially out of the book of Proverbs, but I want to add another one today out of Philippians because we're actually looking at planning and goal setting in Kingdom of LLC as well. This week, I've been sharing out of Philippians chapter 3, verse 14 about focusing on our goals to achieve those goals. As we look at planning today, we're going to also look at goal setting. We're going to also look at action steps and moving forward in the things that God has placed before you to make sure that you are precise in your planning in 2020. So let's start with the two scriptures that I gave you for the word for the year 2020, the year of precision, planning like an eagle. So we're going to first to Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. And I'm going to read this out of the Complete Jewish. It reads as follows. Without clever tactics, an army is defeated, and victory comes from much planning. The other versions don't read that way. They don't even have the word planning in it. It talks about advisors or counsel, but this version says victory comes from much planning. And that's what we want to do. We want to really be very specific, precise in our planning. But again, I'm going to talk to you about after you got the vision, you create a plan. Now you got to have goals and action steps so that to make sure that you actually will achieve that plan. So that's what we're going to be looking at today as we look at planning precisely as an eagle in 2020. All right, so then let's look also at Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5. And I'm going to read that out of the Complete Jewish and the NIV because it reads differently, but they're both wonderful examples for us about planning this year. So verse 5 of Proverbs chapter 21 reads in the Complete Jewish. The plans of the diligent lead only to abundance, but all who rush in arrive only at want. The plans of the diligent lead only to abundance, but all who rush in arrive only at want. Let's look at verse 5 out of the NIV in Proverbs chapter 21. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. Both very important versions of this scripture here, where we see that if I'm diligently planning, because they both speak of that diligent planning, I'm going to have abundance, I'm going to have a profit. So I want to have an abundant profit. And if I'm hasty, meaning I'm not planned. So I skipped over the planning stage and just started doing some stuff. See, when you do that, that's haste. That's hasty. When you're hasty, you're going to be impoverished because you're not going to reap a return. You're going to be in want. You're not going to have the things you need because you want to be careful in your planning. That's the very thing that we see in Proverbs chapter 14 or Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14, that victory comes from much planning. So it's going to be important that I actually sit down and make plans in the presence of the Lord. Well, what type of plans are we talking about? So in Kingdom of LLC, you guys know that, of course, I'm the founder and leader of the Truth in the Spirit. Truth in the Spirit will be celebrating its 19th ministry anniversary on March 14th this year. We're actually having services on the Shabbat of our ministry anniversary. I pray that you'll join us. We'll be at Temple of Peace, 3115 Wickham Avenue in Newport News, Virginia. It's exactly 1 week after Ecclesia 2020 Focus Tower Ecclesia, which is a World Outreach Worship Center. The very next week is our ministry anniversary of 19 years. Now, for 19 years, I've been leading the Truth in the Spirit, but I've also been a business consultant to various business owners and types of businesses and organizations for these same 19 years. In this time, I've learned quite a lot about building businesses, lots of different types of businesses, even businesses that I've built. I've built quite a few of my own businesses. I've helped other people to build businesses. And now, through Kingdom of LLC, I'm actually a business coach and consultant to only believers. Now, the Lord has actually limited me to working only with believers because I'm focusing on a biblical standard for business. I'm ministering by the power of the Holy Spirit out of my apostolic and prophetic anointings. And that's only something that believers can handle. Business owners who are not in relationship with God, who don't believe the whole Bible is true, who are not being filled by the Spirit and led by the Spirit, would not be able to really receive the type of coaching and consulting that I provide through Kingdom of LLC. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because through Kingdom of LLC this week, I do videos and on social media. We have a YouTube channel. It's Kingdom Wealth LLC is our YouTube channel. We got a Facebook page, Kingdom Wealth 7, website, kingdomofllc.com. And I send out emails as well with the videos and with encouragements to those who are on our email list, which you can sign up for at kingdomofllc.com. Now, through this particular coaching vehicle, through this company, I've been sharing this week about planning. And specifically, we're looking at setting goals and action steps. Now, for those of you guys who are connected with the truth and the Spirit, I don't want you to miss out on that. And so today's lesson is going to incorporate the word for the year 2020, the year of precision. It's also going to look at what I've been sharing with and what I'll continue all week to share with the Kingdom Entrepreneurs, the Kingdom of LLC, because these biblical principles are true no matter what you're building. Whether you're building a family, a marriage, a business, a ministry, a community, you still need to plan diligently. You still need to create goals, and you still need to create action steps that will help you to attain those goals. And so we're going to look at that today because we want to make sure that God's people are being precise, because we've got lots of challenges in the body of believers, challenges that the world is not faced with, because we have an enemy who fights us vigorously. The enemy is afraid of us. I've been sharing that through the last Dethroning Mammon worship experience, that the enemy is afraid of you. But in his fear, he seeks to distract us. He seeks to derail us. He seeks to do all types of things to keep us off task and from doing the things of God, because he's afraid of our power. We have the potential to destroy his kingdom because he has established his kingdom in the area of our dominion, which is on earth. The Lord kicked him out of heaven, so he could no longer try to build his empire in the heavenly realm. The Lord kicked him out of heaven and sent him down to earth. So when the Lord kicked Satan out of heaven and sent him down to earth, he sent Satan to our area of dominion. Satan does not have dominion on the earth. Humans have dominion on the earth. And when Satan was sent here to earth, it was a punishment for him. He was being sent to a place where he does not have dominion. But being cunning as he is, we see that in Genesis chapter 3, the serpent was the most cunning of all the wild animals, and that's the one that Satan decided to use. He says, okay, well, since I don't have dominion on the earth, I've got to now try to usurp the dominion of those who do have dominion on the earth, and that's humans. And the only way that we give our dominion to him is through sin. When we sin, which means we listen to him instead of listening to God, we obey Satan instead of obeying God, like we see happening in Genesis chapter 3 with the fall, where he spoke to the woman, he tempts her to eat the fruit, rather than listening to God saying, don't eat the fruit from this tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She listened to the serpent and ate the fruit and gave some to her husband, who also ate. They were listening to Satan rather than God. So then Satan is able to usurp some of their dominion. And of course, they receive the consequences of death. The earth itself is cursed. And that curse is only broken by the sons of God who are the earth is awaiting to be revealed, according to Romans chapter 8. That's us. And that's because of the sacrifice that Messiah Yeshua made to reconcile us back to God, despite our sins. So that with all that being said, it becomes very important that we are precise in moving forward, especially during the time of the shaking. This is the time of the shaking. It started last biblical New Year, and now it's going to continue to shake. Not only is God going to shake the heavens, but he's also going to shake the earth, according to Hebrews chapter 12. And as he does this shaking, the enemy is being dislodged from the 7 mountains of influence, which we addressed in the first Dethroning Mammon worship experience. The enemy is being removed from all the little enterprises and empires that he has tried to establish in our place of dominion, which is in the earth. And now that we are spiritual beings, because we've been sent the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, by Messiah Yeshua, and we are physical beings, giving us dominion in the earth realm, we are able to fight the enemy head on, reclaim those things that he has stolen from us, and move in alignment to advance God's kingdom. But none of this is possible if we're not moving precisely. Precision is essential. And this is why 2020 is the year of precision. Now, we started with vision, being precise in our vision, precise as an eagle. Eagles have great vision. I shared that with you guys. But it wasn't just about our spiritual sight, like being able to see and understanding what God is doing, but even having a vision for every area of life. So this is the thing. I want you to think about your prayer list. What are the things that you are praying, to God about? What have you placed before him? What have you placed at his feet? What is important to you and what you're really seeking him about? I want to share with you, you need a vision for that area of life. If you're praying about your marriage, you need a vision for your marriage. If you're praying about your finances, you need a vision for your finances. If you're praying for your ministry, you need a vision for your ministry. If you're praying for your business, you need a vision for your business. Now, I did a whole teaching on this one about vision. It would have been 3 weeks ago. Vision like an eagle is what it was called. God Speaks, Vision Like an Eagle. Go back and watch that one to really get into what this should look like in creating your visions. But you want to do it in the presence of God because you want an element of what your heart's desire is, but you also want to understand what his heart's desire is. What does God want for your marriage? What does God want for your family, for your business, for your ministry, for your community, whatever it is you're involved in? What is God's heart concerning it? So you want to know that because God will bless that which is in alignment with his will. He will also allow you to have your will. He'll give you the desires of your heart. But that's when your ways are pleasing to him, which means that your heart desires are in alignment with his heart desires. And so all of this becomes important that you have these conversations in the presence of God this year. This year is essential because we are in a window. We have a beautiful window of opportunity. While Mammon and Babylon are coming down, and anti-Messiah, also known as Antichrist, is trying to rise up and get into position. Before that spirit gets into position, we're in a place where I call the changing of the guards. One is coming down, the other one's coming up. That's a window of opportunity for us to attack and to do the things God is telling us to do. Do it now. Everything the Lord has told you to do it now. Things that are not established during this window of opportunity may not have an opportunity to be established until the millennial reign of Messiah. And a lot of the stuff he's told us to do is for now. It's not for the millennial reign. We don't want to wait till the millennial reign to establish those things because our lives will be so different then. Very important that you get the vision, you make it plain. We talked about that 3 weeks ago. And God Speaks, Vision Like an Eagle. Write the vision, make it plain. Now what you want to do is you want to get into the planning process. So in order for you to attain that vision, like for that vision to happen, and remember, vision is what you see. So what you've written in the form of your vision is what it will look like if your marriage is healthy and happy and pleasing to God, if your ministry is thriving, if your business is successful. What would that look like? So that's your vision. Your vision is always what you will see. What will you see when your marriage is healthy, happy, and holy, when your ministry is flourishing, when your business is successful? What will you see? That's the vision. Now what you've got to do is sit down and start to do some planning. Now, the first step in your planning is that you want to set some goals. You need to set some goals. In setting goals, what you're going to do is you're going to create some short-term and some long-term goals. For my business coaching clients, the Kingdom of LLC, this is what I suggest. People ask me all the time, how should I set goals? You want to set 6-month goals, things that you'd like to accomplish in 6 months. You want to set 1-year goals, things that you'd like to accomplish within 1 year. You want to set 2-year goals, things that you'd like to accomplish within 2 years, and 5-year goals. So you got 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. That's what you want to set. And if you're really ambitious, you may want to set a 10-year goal, especially depending on what you're doing. 10-year goals may be very important in what you're doing. Like if you're talking about establishing a ministry, you really may need 10-year goals. But definitely you've got to have the 5 year. That is the shortest long-term goal you should have, is a 5-year goal. That's the shortest long-term, because everything under that is kind of short-term. 1 year, 2 years, 6 months, that's like short-term goals, in my opinion. 5 years is kind of a long-term goal. 10 years is a long-term goal. And so you want to set those goals. Now, I like to work backwards. When I work backwards, I can see so much more clearly. It's like when you do those little maze puzzles in a newspaper, and they have you in one location, and you're supposed to get out of the maze at the other location. It's so much easier to solve that puzzle if you start where you're supposed to be out and you go back to your stuff. It's so much easier than going from where you are to the end. Start at the end. Start at your goal. Start where you want to be. So let's look at the longest term goal that you're going to set. Is it a 10-year goal that you're going to set? Is it a 5-year goal that you're going to set? Now, this is what you want to do. Everything I'm saying to you needs to be written down. These are not things that you keep in your head, because you get distracted, you'll forget, You'll get sidetracked. Or what will happen is your mind will start to change the goal. It'll start to update it and modify it as you go through life, which is a natural thing for your brain to do. It's a very good process. But for you to evaluate whether or not you've achieved your goal, you have to go back to your original goal, not to the one that you continue to update and modify in your mind. You need the original goal as it was written, as it was set. So you have to write it. Like it's not possible to plan effectively without writing down your goals. So write down your 5-year or 10-year goals, depending on whichever one is the longest term goal that you're able to set at this point. So if you're going to write 10-year goals, if you're going to write 5-year goals, that means you look at today's date and you don't write 5 years from now. You put on, or what is it, February 12th, I believe it is. 5 years from now would be 2025. So on February 12th, 2025, I would like to have accomplished these goals. Or on February 12th, 2030, I would like to have accomplished these goals. See, the date is essential because every day, 5 years from now, moves out one more day. Every day, 5 years from now, is a day further away. See, you need to make sure that it is set from 5 years from today. Otherwise, 5 years from now is a goal that continues to push out. Because 5 years from now changes every single day because it becomes 5 years from that day. That is an ineffective way to set goals. Goals have to have deadlines. They have to have dates associated with them. So your 5-year goals, your 10-year goals need to have the date 5 years from now or the date 10 years from now because you're starting today. No excuses, no going backward, no procrastination. We're starting today with the goals, okay? So write your goals out, those long-term goals, the 10-year or the 5-year goals with the date. That's very important because we're not going to push it out every day. From today, 5 years from now, from today, 10 years from now, okay? Then you want to, as you set the goals, each one of the goals that you want to accomplish within that time period, within 5 years from now, within 10 years from now, every goal that you want to accomplish must have action steps included with it. Now, for those of you who are part of my Prosperity Startup Coaching through Kingdom Up LLC, you know this is in your workbook. The setting the goals based off of the dates and the times and the long-term, short-term, everything I'm saying right now is actually a part of Prosperity Startup Coaching for Kingdom entrepreneurs. So if you're actually a part of that and you haven't gotten to that place yet, know that it's coming. You can skip ahead to start working on that today. There's the workbook for Prosperity Startup Coaching is designed so that you can do that. So you don't have to just stay where you are in the workbook. You can go right to those pages that would have that have the template for you to establish these goals that I'm talking about. For the rest of you, what you want to do, you're going to make sure that you got your date. You're going to make sure that you've got your goals because you should have goals. You should have multiple goals. Multiple goals for 5 years or for 10 years from now. With each goal, there must be multiple action steps. Meaning, what are the actions that must take place? Or what are the things that must be in place in order for you to accomplish that particular goal? Whatever the goal is, there's got to be some things, some action steps that are going to help you to accomplish that goal. You need to know what those action steps are. You need to list those action steps. And this is key because this is how you move forward. When we talk about in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14, victory comes from much planning. And we talk about in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5, the plans of the diligent lead only to abundance or lead only to profit. That profit, that abundance, that victory comes from this type of planning. Goals with a deadline and clear action steps that you can follow up on, that you can actually follow through with. That's what planning looks like. If you don't have deadlines, if you don't have goals, if you don't have action steps that will cause you to achieve those goals, you're not actually planning. You're doing something else, you're dreaming. We're not talking about dreaming like eagles dream. As far as we know, eagles don't dream. I've never read anything about eagles dreaming. Eagles plan. We're going to talk about how eagles plan in just a minute. I shared it in the word for the year. We're going to talk about it a little bit here in a moment as well because you need to understand this planning process. And they're very precise in their planning. They don't play around. But we have got to make sure that we are in a position where we are planning precisely to actually achieve our goals. Failure to plan is planning to fail, meaning There's no way you can accomplish your goals if you haven't planned to accomplish them. Planning to accomplish your goals helps to ensure that they will be achieved. If you do not plan to accomplish your goals, you cannot achieve your goals. It doesn't happen by osmosis. It doesn't happen while you're sleeping. The achievement of your goals isn't going to fall miraculously out of the sky. That's not how achievement of goals happens, not even in the kingdom. Because a lot of people, and I've talked to you guys about this, have this idea of God being a magical God and stuff falling out of the sky. And the only time we see that happening is manna. He let the manna fall out of the sky miraculously. But we received the word at the third Dethroning Amendment worship experience out of Joshua chapter 5 that the manna is going to stop. Which means there are things that God was providing for you in your life, and now He is depending upon you to provide for yourself. And the only way you can do that is through careful planning, precise planning, dates, goals, action steps. That's a plan. You don't have those three elements, it's not a plan. So make sure that you set either your 5-year long-term goals or your 10-year long-term goals. Set the goals. There should be multiple goals for 5 years or multiple goals for 10 years. Set the goals, create action steps that will cause you to attain those goals, and list the date 5 years from now or the date 10 years from now, so that you actually get to go back and see if you're making progress with those goals. The date is very important. Now, what you want to do is now you go backward from there. If you did 10-year goals, then the next thing you're going to do is 5-year goals, because this is the reality. In order for you to achieve your 10-year goals, there has to be something that you have achieved at the 5-year mark, which is the halfway mark. Something has to be in place. Something has to have been achieved at 5 years for you to make it to the 10-year mark. Same thing is true if you set 5-year goals. Something has to be achieved by 2 years, by the 2-year mark, in order for you to make the 5-year mark. Same thing for your 2-year goals. Something has to be achieved at the 1-year mark in order for you to make the 2-year mark, and something has to be achieved at the 6-month mark in order for you to make the 1-year mark. See, this is why we're going backwards, because this is what's essential. God's people are being distracted by the enemy on purpose. He is intentionally distracting God's people. He's distracting us all the time with all types of stuff. If I don't have a precise plan, it is hard for me to determine what's a distraction, though it may be a good thing, but it's for somebody else, and what's actually a part of God's will for my life, especially during the time of the shaking. As I'm sharing with you, all types of stuff is being shaken, is being tossed around, things are coming down in the world around you and also in your own life. And you will not be able to determine if things that are presented to you are opportunities to help you achieve your goals, or if they are distractions that will detract from your goals, unless you have planned precisely. You've got to be able to look back at that plan to determine whether or not whatever is being presented before you, whatever opportunity, or whatever resource, whatever is being presented, is it a part of your plan or is it outside of your plan? It may be a great thing, but if it's not going to help you achieve your plan, it's a distraction. And this is why you create those plans in the presence of God, because your plans should be in alignment with His kingdom, and it should help you advance His kingdom no matter what you're doing. Even if you're planning for your marriage should be in some way bringing Him glory. And so, as you align with Him, you can determine through your plan, to evaluate your plan, that which is actually contributing to what God is doing and that which is a distraction. Now, of course, you still have to be prayerful. You can never not be prayerful. You still have to be prayerful, because there are times when we don't see everything clearly. But there are things that clearly are not in alignment with a vision. They're not in alignment with your plan. They're going to take time, energy, and resources away from that which you should be devoting to the plan that you set. So set the plan. Make it very clear, very plain, so you can go back and look at your plan and determine if something is a part of your plan or if it's outside of your plan. Very clear that you're able to do that. Very important that you're able to do that, clearly. Okay, so now, as you go through and you do that, there's another element to your planning that I want to suggest that you add. While having dates and deadlines is important, having action steps and goals is important. Additionally, you want to have costs. Every goal and action step that you have is going to cost you something. What is it going to cost? The Lord tells us to count the cost. So I'm speaking of financial costs. I'm also speaking of spiritual costs. What is it going to cost you to achieve that goal? What is it going to cost you to implement that particular action step? See, this is key, because without looking at the cost, you can have an amazing plan, but then you still can't fulfill it because you can't pay the price. You've got to know what achieving your goals is going to cost you. You need to know what it's going to cost you financially. What is it going to cost you emotionally? What is it going to cost you spiritually? Because there's specific warfare that's associated with certain things. And some of that you won't know unless you seek God. Other things like the financial cost, you're going to have to do some research. This is all an important part of the process, because without doing that, you will still fail in your plan, because you may not have the appropriate resources allocated to what God is telling you to do. You got to have the time allocated to it. You got to have the energy allocated to it. You got to have the finances allocated to it. And you got to have the spiritual resources such as prayer and fasting and Bible study. You got to have the spiritual disciplines that will be necessary for wherever God is trying to take you. See, all of that is counting up the cost, because certain things you may have time for, but you may not have the energy for them. You may have money for them, but you may not have the spiritual stamina or maturity for them. This is why counting the cost becomes essential. Now, I want to encourage you to spend some time doing this planning. I have just said a lot. I just revealed a whole lot to you. What I just shared with you is an entire month's worth of prosperity startup coaching. Like in a month, we deal with all of that: the goal setting, the financial planning. We've got the actual numbers there, the itemized line items for each thing, and that it will cost for building your business, for the timeline, and the finances are associated with the short-term and long-term goals. The action steps are connected with the finances. The goals are connected with the action steps, which are connected back to the vision. This is a month of prosperity startup coaching, an entire month. And it's important that you understand that this is a serious process. What I'm telling you to do is not something you should be able to do in 5 minutes. It's not something you should be able to do like that. This is an intentional conversation, ongoing conversation with the Lord, where you set aside some time to do this very thing that I'm suggesting that you do. You've got to be able to look at the plan, evaluate the plan, pray into the plan, go back and edit the plan, revise the plan, add elements that you're missing from the plan, seek God for scriptures that will help you to be even more precise in the plan. Realistically, evaluate the resources that you have. That's a whole nother portion of prosperity startup coaching. Looking at your time, your finances, and your energy, and what you have to devote to this, and what you need from God, because you may not have enough. And then asking Him for plans to actually get more time, more energy, more financial resources. He's able to do it, but there's still actions we've got to take in order to attain resources that we may not have, that we need in order to do what God has called us to do. With all of that being said, you've got to be intentional and precise in your planning in 2020. No longer are we depending upon the idea of the magical God to provide everything for us. He has called us super conquerors, more than conquerors in Romans chapter 8. We are going in to possess the land. And people who possess the land have to be leaders, have to be people who are those who make decisions, those who are assertive, are courageous. These are not people that are waiting for manna to fall out the sky. That's not who these people are. The type of people that God is raising up in this season are go-getters. They're proactive, not reactive. They assess situations and realize that changes are happening, and they move accordingly before everything starts to fall apart. Looking at trends, looking at patterns, looking at what's happening around them, and being realistic and honest about what's happening. Not postponing it and hoping that it will change by itself. See, that's still that idea of a magical God. No, God has shown us the things we need to see. We have the information that we need. He's given us the gifts, the talents, and abilities, and even the resources that we need. Even if you don't feel it, He's done it. So if that is the case, that means then that what we've got to do is take action. And in order for me to move precisely, see, that's next week, precision in our movement, I've got to plan precisely. That's what we're looking at this week. I have to plan precisely. And even in my precise planning, I've got to be open to going back and reevaluating my plan. I've got to go back and update it. I've got to go back and make changes to it. I've got to go back and make sure that plan lines up with what God is doing and what God is saying. Like, this is going to be very, very important. Make sure it lines up with what I've actually experienced, because sometimes we can make a plan with incomplete information. As we get into it, we realize it requires more or less than we thought, or maybe it requires an element that we didn't even figure into the plan whatsoever. So now I've got to revise my plan. That's fine. But keep the same end goal. Keep the same goal in mind. Keep the same deadline and date in mind. This is very important. As you keep those things in mind, only revise them if you see that you absolutely have to. Otherwise, just revise the elements that you need to revise. Keep the deadline in line. Keep the goals in line, and continue to work toward those same goals and deadlines. So now, let us look at an eagle in her planning. When we look at the eagle in planning, we want to look at the female because she's really precise in her planning. I shared this in the first time we looked at the word 2020, the year of precision. I shared about the female eagles planning. But I'm going to go over it again because it's just really, it was encouraging to me to see how precise she is and how she doesn't play around with planning. She's not willy-nilly about this thing because she realizes that it's a life or death situation. So what she is planning for, she's planning to be a mother, which is also planning for the future survival of her species. Very important. She is planning for the future survival of her species. She's planning for posterity. She's planning for the life of eagles down the line. This is what this female eagle is planning for. And so her planning is actually very important. What she's doing in her planning process is very, very important. And so this is what we're going to look at with understanding the vision. The vision is that there will be an abundance of healthy, independent eagles who are able to continue on this line of eagles. Like, this is the vision that she has in her mind. But there's some things she's got to do to make sure that happens. And as the female, she's the gatekeeper. She's the one that has to ensure that the line of eagles continues. It's not the male who is holding this vision in his heart. His vision is much more short-sighted. He's just looking for a mate, like most males. He's just looking for a mate. She is looking to extend the longevity of the species. This is what she's looking to do. And because she has that focus, because she has that vision, she is able to make sure that the entire process, the entire mating process and the family building process between herself and whoever her chosen mate turns out to be is one that leads to the future growth of the eagle species. Very important. So I'm going to tell you something about eagle's movement so that you understand eagle planning. Now, you guys, of course, you know that eagles build their nests in high places. They build them in high places so that their eaglets cannot become prey for other birds or for other animals. Like a snake would eat an eagle egg if he got a chance to. Other birds, like hawks, would eat eagle eggs or eagle babies, eagle chicklets, eaglets, if they got a chance to. And so it's important that eagles set their nest up very high because they're trying to keep their eaglets away from predators. So the nest is set up very high. Also, many of you understand about the process between an eagle mama and the eagle babies when she's trying to get them to fly. When it's time for them to leave the nest, you know, we've heard of the stirring of the nest, how she stirs the nest to make the nest uncomfortable. So then the eaglets will fly out of the nest, or at least jump out of the nest, because it's pricking them. It starts to stick them and prick them. It's not comfortable and cozy like it used to be anymore. It's actually prickly and painful. And so they have to take the leap and kind of jump out of the nest. And this is how they learn to fly. Without that process of her stirring up the nest, the eagles would never leave the nest, which means they would never learn to fly, which means they would never learn to feed themselves, which means that the species of the eagles would die out. We'd no longer have any more eagles if that process of the stirring of the nest never happens. Now, understanding that, I want to share with you her planning process for the future longevity of her species. This is what it looks like. And it starts in mating season. In mating season, all that stuff I just told you is in the eagle female's mind. It's all in her mind. So the first thing she does, because she's going to have suitors, because it's mating season. So other, eagles are looking for eagles to mate with. The males are looking for females to mate with. And they're committed. Once they mate, they stay together. And so she's looking for a lifelong partner. The males are also looking for lifelong partners, looking for someone to mate with, because that's how they're designed. Now, what happens when her suitors show up, a potential suitor shows up, she tests the suitor, the male eagle, to ensure that he is committed. Now, not only must he be committed to her specifically, he's also got to be committed to future planning, future family planning. Why? Because mating leads to eaglets. It leads to little babies. She knows that. She's keeping that in mind, understanding that it does not make sense for her to enter into the mating process with an eagle who's not focused on building a nest, a home for their family, who's not focused on the future development and growth of their eaglets. If he's not focused on that, he's not the mate for her. Because mating is not an end in of itself. It is for a purpose. It's for the purpose of creating more eagles so that the line can continue. She knows that. She's got that in her mind. Whether the male has it in his mind or not, doesn't matter. She makes him focus on that because she's planning. She's planning for the future. She's already being a good mama, even though she doesn't have any babies yet. So the way she tests the commitment of the suitors, commitment to her and commitment to their future family planning, is by dropping twigs. And she'll pick up a little twig, fly high, and then drop the twig. He has to then go, swoop down, catch the twig before it hits the ground, bring it back to her. Then she'll take the same twig, if he does it correctly, fly up higher, do the same thing. He's going to swoop down, catch the twig before it hits the ground, bring it back to her. She'll go up even higher, drop the same twig. He's going to swoop down, catch it before it hits the ground, bring it back to her. Now, she's testing quite a few things in this test. A lot of those people the scientists who study eagles and study animals, a lot of them say she's testing his commitment to her. But she's much more. As I read about this and I started to pray about it and I talked to God about it, she's testing him on multiple levels at this point. She is testing all types of aspects of his character and his physical abilities with this one little twig dropping test. She's testing all types of things. And so let me tell you about the rest of the process, and then we can backtrack and I can show you what she was testing during her mating test. Now, if she chooses to mate with him, like he keeps bringing the twig back, she's satisfied with him passing the test, then they choose to mate. The very next thing he has to do is he has to gather twigs in order to build their nest. Why? Because they just mated. So now she's expecting eaglets. She's expecting to lay some fertilized eggs. So he has to go and get twigs to build a nest, but it's not just twigs. He gets twigs, he gets grass, he gets thorns, and he adds even some of his own feathers. He has to pull some of his talons out in order to put them in the nest to make it nice and soft for the eaglets. Now, it's interesting because there are layers that go into building this nest. The outer layer is thorns. It keeps predators out, like a snake. Snake can't hover over the eagle's nest because it's going to be in a high place. So there won't be branches above it, so you can like drop down from a tree branch to eat the eggs. He would have to slither up from the rock, the side of the mountain, because usually on mountaintops and stuff like that, or at the tops of trees. So he'd have to come from the side to get into this nest. But there are thorns on the sides, on the outside of his nest. So a snake or some other walking predator can't get in and eat those eggs because they'd have to go through the thorns to get to it. So the thorns are there to deter predators. The next level is twigs. The little twigs, remember she had them catching twigs before they hit the ground? So we got little twigs there, which is going to help to make a nice sturdy structure. Then you've got some more thorns on an inside layer, an inner layer of the twigs. Then you got some soft grass. Then you got some more thorns. Then you got more grass, and then you got the actual feathers of the father eagle that he was pulling from himself, sacrificing his own feathers. So there's so much that's happening in this nest, which we'll go to in just a minute. Now, we know, of course, then the female eagle, she lays the eggs in this nest. They're going to hatch. They're going to sit on them. They're going to hatch. When they hatch, they're going to find a warm, cushy nest, and it has the smell of their mother because she's been sitting on their eggs, and it has the smell of their father because he has put his own feathers into this nest. So there's already a connection and familiarity and some security for these eaglets concerning their family unit. However, as they grow and it's time for them to now leave the nest and start to learn to fly, what she now does is she stirs the nest with her wings. She stirs the nest. Now remember, there are 2 layers of thorns on the inside of this nest. There's twigs, then thorns, then grass, then thorns, then grass, then feathers. So as she stirs the nest with her wings, those thorns that were under the grass and under the feathers start to now appear. They start to emerge. This is why she stirs it. And this is important because the thorns were preset. They were set there before the eggs were even laid. See, that's some serious planning on behalf of both of the eagles, of the eagle parents. They put thorns into 2 levels of this nest before eggs were even laid, knowing that one day they were going to have to stir the nest and the thorns were going to have to prick their eaglets to make them jump out of the nest. Failure to do that gives them, when they stir the nest, there's nothing there to prick the eaglets, and there's no incentive for the eaglets to jump out of the nest. And so it can literally cause death to not only their eaglets, but to the eagle line. And eagles do not preset the nest with thorns. See, that's planning. That's planning backwards. Like I was telling you guys, what is the goal? Okay, well, we need our eaglets to be independent. We need them to jump out of the nest and fly, which means when we're building this nest, we've got to have some elements in it that are thorny, that are prickly, that are going to push them out of the nest. So when we stir it, those things will emerge. So it's like having challenges already preset in the life of your children, knowing that they will need those challenges in order to grow and mature. Like, this is the very thing that the eagle parents are doing. They set the thorns already in place into this nice, cushy, comfy home, the nice, safe home, so that when it's time for it to not be so cushy and comfy, when it's time for the home to push them forward, the home itself is already in position. All they got to do is stir it. So now that the thorns come forward and the eaglets are pushed out of the nest. Now, when the eaglets jump out of the nest, you know what happens? They flap, 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 can't fly too well. The parents swoop down and catch them, bring them up higher, let them go again, flap, 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 flap. Parents swoop down and catch them, bring them up higher, let them go again until they start to learn to fly. And this is actually developing the strength in their wings. It develops their focus. It removes some of their fear. It's a process that creates that development, that maturing for the eaglets. Now remember, when the female eagle was going up high and she was dropping twigs down, so the male could swoop down and catch the twig before it hit the ground. One, she knew he was going to need to have a strong enough beak that he could precisely pick up twigs without breaking them, because he's going to need them to build that nest. She also needed him to have good enough vision that he could see those little teeny twigs falling in midair to catch them, and because later on he's going to have to be to see twigs on the ground to build this nest. But she's also thinking about her babies. As they fly up high and they drop those eaglets, the father's got to be able to swoop down and catch them before they hit the ground, or they will die. Just like he had to catch the twig in their mating test before it hit the ground. See, she was seriously planning ahead with her one little test. With dropping that twig from a high place, it tested his vision. It tested his beak strength and sensitivity. It tested his flight ability to be able to swoop down and catch something before it hits the ground. I mean, it tested so many different things. And then, of course, his commitment. Because he could say, this is too much, I'm not trying to deal with this, and fly away. And so we see that he is committed to her mating process, because she does this a lot. Flying up and dropping that twig, she does it repetitively for some time. Why? Because he's got to be committed to the building of the nest. He's got to be committed to the raising of the eaglets. He's got to be committed to catching the eaglets when they're falling, and she takes them up high and drops them down. He's got to be committed to swoop in and catch them and bring them back up high. And he's got to be committed to this entire process. And if he's not committed to the courtship, he's not going to be committed to the raising of their family. This is a serious test that she is committed, given to her suitors, and it is one that comes from some seriously careful planning. Careful planning that leads to a healthy and successful family. Now, this is important for us because I told you we're looking at all areas of life: marriage, family, business, ministry, everything God has called you to. We want to plan like these eagles plan. We want to plan for the future before we even have children or spiritual children or customers. We want to plan for them. See, this is what God blesses. God blesses us planning for things before we even have them. God will bless that because he sees that we are in a place of order. He sees that we're in a place of alignment with him, and he sees that we are ready to catch the blessing that he wants to pour out. When we wait for God to bless us first, look, if you bless me or when you bless me, then I will get in position. Then I will line up. Then I'll make a plan. See, then we're not going to be the ones that receive the blessings because that's not how it works. The Lord is an investor and he is looking for good investments. Anything that we're praying for, if he answers that prayer, he's investing in us. He's given us some resources, he's given us some ability, he's given us some character trait, he's given us some opportunity, he's giving us something that is an investment in his way of thinking. Because when he gives it to us, we should now be able to give him a return on this investment by being faithful kingdom stewards who are advancing his kingdom. We're not able to do that if we're not planning, if we're not in position, and if we have not set some order to the things that he's already given us so that then we can catch the things that he wants to pour out. And so I want to encourage you to really be thoughtful, to really be as thoughtful as this female eagle who is planning. She's planning years down the road. Like this is a process, the mating, the laying of the eggs, or the building the nest, the laying of the eggs, the hatching of the eggs, the growth of the eaglets, the teaching eaglets to fly. This is a few years. So she's planning way in advance for this whole process to happen. And when she plans precisely and she sticks to the plan, like she can't drop that twig 2 times and go, oh, let me cut him some slack. Because what if he then doesn't believe that he's got to really be committed? What if he halfway does the nest and the eaglets don't feel the thorns when they stir it? Or the nest isn't sturdy enough, so an egg falls out of the nest because he didn't build a sturdy enough nest, because it's the male eagle's responsibility to build the nest while she's carrying these eggs that she's about to lay into this nest. And this is very important that we understand that not only do we need to create the plan in the presence of God to make sure that it's a good plan that is able to succeed, we've also got to then be sure that we commit to our plan. Once he gives you the plan, don't divert from it. Don't procrastinate on it. Don't try to cut corners on the plan. Stick to the plan. Stick to the plan God has actually given you. And he honors that. When he sees a person who's diligent, who's going to stick to his plan and focus on the things that he's put before them, that's the person he will bless. That person will be blessed to be a blessing. And we want to be those people. Not only is it important to us that we are those people, it is important to those around us. Because again, I shared this through Kingdom of LLC when I gave the word 2020 year of precision. I shared that God is calling us to be Josephs, to walk in the Joseph anointing, to build storehouses and places of refuge. Because though we're in a season of prosperity, famine is coming. Hard times and challenges are coming. And there will be others who didn't get this revelation, who will not have planned ahead. And we should be those who have planned ahead, who have some resources available, places of refuge and storehouses available, and that we have heard from God. And when people say, where is God in all of this? Why would he abandon us like this and allow this to happen? We can say, God hasn't abandoned us. We planned for this. He knew this was coming. This is why we have places of refuge and storehouses, because he loves you. He loves us. He planned ahead, and he's coming back soon. See, this season of challenge coming forward, the time where the anti-Messiah is at work and raging throughout the earth and trying to get people to worship him and all of that. When all that is happening, literally, the body of believers should have our greatest harvest of souls. Because we should be able to bring in those who don't want to follow him, those who know something is wrong. But with regard to resources, they don't have any other options but to follow him or to die. We would present the third option, which is to follow the Lord and receive that which he has prepared, because he knew this was coming. It did not take the Lord by surprise. This season of the anti-Messiah prowling on the earth, seeking whom he can devour, trying to get everybody to worship him instead of the one true God, trying to control buying and selling of all things. See, we know it's coming. It's in the book. It's in Revelation chapter 13. We know it's coming. And so God is showing us how to prepare. So us being blessed to be a blessing is about much more than us in this season. It's about souls. And that's what God really cares about. God is always trying to win souls. More than anything else, he cares about souls. That's what true wealth is to him. That was the very first Kingdom Wealth workshop that he ever had me to do. Talked about true wealth. That's what's true wealth to him. It's people. It's souls. He wants souls to be saved. He wants people to know that he loves them. He wants people to choose him and his ways. But that won't happen if God's people are not prepared for the challenging times to come. Because how hard is it for us to convince someone that God is a loving God and he knows all things, and when challenges occur, God's people have no answers and no response? See, that means then either we're not listening to him or he didn't tell us. Scripture says he does nothing without first revealing it to his prophets. And I'm telling you, as one of his prophets, the challenging times are coming. And it is for us to set apart storehouses and places of refuge so that during the challenging times, people can turn to God, receive salvation, and also receive the sustenance that they need in order to continue to live. That's the type of ministry that he would have us to do. Not the spiritual ministry, but the time is coming where that will not suffice. It doesn't suffice now, but we definitely will have to do more than just that which is spiritual. People will need a natural ministry. They will need people to take them in and to help provide for them and care for them and their families during a time where it seems like everything is lost because so many things are shaking around us. This is not a time for us to fear. This is a time for us to be bold and courageous. This is a time for us to take the land. This is a time for us to be like Joshua and to become a part of God's army and to really move forward, understanding the plans of the enemy and preparing for them. It's a time for us to be like Joseph, to get the prophetic vision, to make the apostolic plan, and to see the plan, hurry the plan out, to not quit halfway through, to not cut ourselves some slack, to not cut corners, but to do it exactly as the Lord is telling us to do it. Now, in order for that to happen, I got to encourage you that you've got to live Romans 12, 1 and 2. You have to live Romans 12, 1 and 2. For all this stuff I just said to happen, and for it to happen through you, you got to live Romans 12, 1 and 2. So I'm going to quote it to you from the Complete Jewish Bible. I beseech you therefore, brothers, in view of God's mercies, to present your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable unto the Lord, for this is the logical temple worship for you, because we are the temples of the living God. So we got to present ourselves, our sin nature, our issues, our fears, all of that. We got to present it before the Lord as a living sacrifice. We got to lay out before him daily. Confess all the confusion and the pain and the Lord, I'm stuck and I don't know how to go forward and I feel like I can't move anymore in your will. I don't feel like I have enough resources, enough time, enough energy. I don't think I am enough. I don't feel like I'm worthy or I'm smart enough. Whatever. This is what we're presenting before the Lord. He has been merciful to us. In light of his mercies, we've got to present ourselves as living sacrifice. We got to lay ourselves on the altar before him. This is very important because if he's going to live in us, he's the logical temple worship, and he's going to live in us, my heart has to be the altar. And on that altar, my sin nature must die daily. Then the Lord's Spirit will dwell within me, and I will be the temple, and I'll be the light of the world, the light from his menorah, which is that Ruach HaKodesh, that holy fire, that Yeshua myself as a living sacrifice on a daily basis. And if you don't know what that looks like, I want to encourage you to go to burntoffering.org, BURNTOFFERING, burntoffering.org. Download that free workbook. It's got video training in it. It's got a workbook that goes through through burnt offerings on Leviticus chapter 1, and it talks about presenting yourself as a living sacrifice based off of Leviticus chapter 1 for deliverance. And this is something we can do on a regular basis. God can deliver us. Every time he shows us there's something in our soul that needs to go, something that will hinder us, something that is opposing his will in our lives, present a burnt offering. Every day, confess and repent before him, every single day. But when he shows you something you really need deliverance from, because you see habits of sin or habits of disobedience or habits of fear and all of that, whenever you see trends and habits that are not healthy, that are not holy, you need to present a burnt offering. Go to burntoffering.org. Download the workbook so you learn how to do this so that you can facilitate deliverance in the presence of God yourself. You are the temple of the living God. You've got to present your sin nature on the holy altar of your own heart so that his holy fire can come down and burn it all up. That's a burnt offering. And when we receive deliverance from a burnt offering, because it's a very thorough process in Leviticus chapter 1, we never go back to it. Will we need more burnt offerings in the future? Absolutely. Every time you give God a burnt offering, you realize there's something underneath that you need to give another burnt offering for. But that thing is gone forever. It does not come back because it's burned completely in the fire. It is immersed completely in the fire. It will never return. There's a process he gave us in Leviticus chapter 1 for complete and sustained, lasting deliverance. We got to understand it. This is the part of what we teach in our Priesthood Academy International, because there are spiritual sacrifices that we're supposed to be offering according to the book of Leviticus. And when you connect that with Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, about us being the temple of the living God, worship, presenting ourselves as living sacrifices, I need to know what those sacrifices are so that I can get everything that Yeshua died for me to have, so that I can really live the abundant life. So that was verse 1 of Romans chapter 12, verse 1. Verse 2, do not be conformed to the standards of the Olam Hazeh, this present age. And it says in complete Jewish, but keep letting yourselves be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now that's very important because other versions say be ye transformed or be transformed. It's like telling you to command yourself to be transformed, but the truth is you can't do that. Jeremiah chapter 17 tells me that my heart is deceptive above all things and mortally sick. I can't command myself to be transformed. I have to keep letting myself be transformed. See, it's God who transforms me. My job is to submit to the process. And that's what verse 1 of Romans 12 is all about. I'm presenting myself as a living sacrifice. I'm submitting to the process. I keep letting myself be transformed. And be transformed. Or be transformed also speaks from that Hellenistic or that Greco-Roman mindset of like conquering transformation. We can't conquer transformation. It is an ongoing process that must be participated in every day. Every day I need to be transformed. Every day I keep letting myself be transformed by the renewing of my mind. Every single day. God is renewing my mind. He's delivering my soul every single day. So that every day I grow, every day I mature, every day I go higher in him. Every single day I overcome. That process in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, read it in the complete Jewish Bible, it reveals how it should look. Because then it tells me, still in verse 2 of Romans chapter 12, keep letting yourselves be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Then you will know what God wants. And you will agree that what God wants is good, satisfying, and able to succeed. Now that speaks of alignment. Because I keep letting myself be transformed by the renewing of my mind, now I get to discern what God wants. See, this is why Joseph didn't have to prepare for meeting with Pharaoh. He kept himself on the altar before the Lord. He kept allowing himself to be transformed by the renewing of his mind. And the reason we know it is because he forgave Potiphar for throwing him in jail. He forgave Potiphar's wife for lying on him. He forgave his brothers and took care of his whole family. Like he keeps forgiving people. He forgave the cupbearer for forgetting about him for 2 years. And we know it because he's living in freedom. He's free. He's not bound by resentment or bitterness or pointing the finger at people. When he's able to help, he helps. When he's able to work, he works. Now, many of us might have been a good steward at Potiphar's house. Okay, so I'm a slave at a rich man's house. If I do well, I'll get elevated. Fine. But once I had to leave that place and was thrown into prison after having already been thrown into a pit by my brothers and sold into slavery in Egypt, now I'm in prison because this woman done lied on me and all I've done is be good to her family and her household. It might have been, many of us would have just been bitter and resentful at that point. But we see that Joseph does it. He immediately starts to help and produce good fruit in the prison. He starts to lead things in the prison. He starts to make the prison more efficient. Joseph is bearing great fruit. And in a time when most of us would have been depressed, sullen, angry, resentful, vengeful, that type of stuff stifles you. You cannot be creative and you cannot hear God when that is in your heart. You won't know what God wants if that type of stuff is in your heart. This is why we have to keep letting ourselves be transformed by the renewing of our mind. This is why we have to keep presenting ourselves an altar before God. This is essential because all of us have that stuff in our hearts. Every day he's got to be pulling that stuff out. Every day we need him to pull it out of our souls so that I can now hear what he wants. Because resentment, bitterness, me, I, when is my turn? That stuff is being removed because all of that is a distraction. And the Lord won't speak if our souls are yelling like that at him or at anyone. Our souls have to be quiet and still. We have to be in shalom. And the only way to be in shalom is that I have to continue to get deliverance. Continually, he's healing me. Continually, he's removing that stuff that's not of him. Continually, he's doing it. Now, I can be still and know that he is God. And it's in that place that I can hear his voice. Now I can hear him speaking. And when I hear him speaking, he gives me the plan. He gives me the goals. He gives me the action steps. He gives me the deadlines. He tells me the cost. Now I've got a nice, precise plan. And every day we're talking like this. And every day he's giving me more and more and more. And as he gives all that to me, it's so beautiful. As he gives all that to me, now I'm able to implement it because I'm going back to him even to receive his character, his work ethic, his perseverance, his love, like his wisdom. I'm going back to him to get more and more of that. So now, not only did I hear what he said, but I agree with him that his will is good, satisfying, and able to succeed. So I'm going to be committed to carrying it out. I'm not fighting against my soul to do God's work. My soul has now been brought into alignment so that my spirit, which is his spirit, my soul, which is my thoughts, my emotions, and my will, and my body are all in agreement to do God's will. So this is how his burden is easy and his yoke is light. Only through this process that we see in Romans 12, 1 and 2. And it's only through that process that I can precisely plan and implement the plans that God himself has given me. Very important to understand that. And so I pray that encouraged you. I pray that you allow God to speak with you. Again, go to burntoffering.org so that you can really understand this process of laying yourself on the altar before the Lord every day on a regular basis. Because we've got to do it as his people, as a royal priesthood. It's part of our responsibility for ourselves and even for others. Also, if you are a kingdom entrepreneur, go to kingdomofllc.com. There's lots of resources there. There's a 7-day coach, which talks about God's model for life and business in the 7 days of creation. There's a prophetic word to kingdom entrepreneurs called God Wants to Talk with You about your business, where I talk about where the Lord himself speaks. Actually, it's amazing to me too, that he brings us above our glass ceilings so that we're actually on the throne with him. And that glass ceiling, our glass ceilings become that glass, the sea of glass that proceeds from his throne. And we become who he really designed us to be because our creative ability comes out of our true identity. And all of that is possible when we're giving him the burnt offerings so we're delivered and healed on a regular basis. See how it all goes together? And this is why I lead the Truth and Spirit and Kingdom of LLC, because the reality is they go together. And only God is able to integrate it like that. For me, business was over here and ministry was over here for like 16, 17 years. God himself started to show me, no, I need you to bring all of it together because the people in ministry need business wisdom. And the people that you minister to for business, they need the anointing that you operate in the ministry. It must come together. You've got to be able to hear stuff like that from God too. Things that your mind would ordinarily reject. Things that you would never come up with without him speaking to you. You need to hear that type of stuff. Because that's the type of stuff that's going to take you to the next level. That is what's going to propel you into your destiny. That's what's going to position you for the alignment that causes you to be blessed, to be a blessing. That is what's going to allow you to be a Joseph in your generation. It's only that. Because there are things we can't even conceive of that are actually necessary for us to fulfill our purpose. Only God can download it. But we got to be in the right position for the download. And so again, I hope that encouraged you. I hope it blessed you. I hope that we will see you this Saturday at Temple Service at 3 p.m. at Temple of Peace, 3115 Wickham Avenue, Newport News, Virginia. God is doing some great things. And I pray that you will connect with us so that the very things he's doing in us, he can also do in you. And we can support what he's doing in you and encourage you and train you so that you can do everything that God has set before you in this season. And so if he's called you to connect with the Truth and the Spirit, just email me at info, I-N-F-O, at truthandspirit.org, because I'd love to talk to you about either being a tithing member or a covenant partner because you're part of another ministry. You can be a covenant partner for training through the Priesthood Academy International. You can be a covenant partner as a ministry leader through the Ecclesia Network of Ministries, or a covenant partner as a business owner through the Nehemiah Network. But either way, we want to bless you, train you, support you, and really propel you into that which God has for you. Because when any one of us succeeds, we all succeed. But if any one of us fails, we all take a loss. And I don't want the body to take a loss because what was in you was not fulfilled. This is your year to do it. We got a window of opportunity to make it happen, and God has placed on my heart to support you in making sure you fulfill your purpose and that you are blessed to be a blessing in the challenging times to come. Isaac reaped a thousandfold harvest during a famine. We can do the same, but only if we're precise as eagles in year 2020. I pray that blessed you, and I hope to talk to you very soon.